For the fourth time in 4 years, the United States Supreme Court is considering a challenge to an emotional case. To some, it's about their continued opposition to the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. But to others, it is much more personal. To them, it's about the government telling a private business what they must offer their employees with regard to various forms of contraception. The fight may continue, but there are plenty who see it as misguided and unnecessary. A lot more say, we have got to get this settled. Let's get to the heart of this emotional matter. Our guest is National Director at Priests for Life and the author of Abolishing Abortion, How You Can Play a Part in Ending the Greatest Evil of Our Day, Father Frank Pavone. Father, thank you so much for joining us. The case that we are talking about is Zubik versus Burwell. We have oral arguments scheduled for Wednesday. Now, here's the simple line that a lot of people will put in this case. They'll say, the question here is simple. Do religious objectors get to disobey the laws they dislike even when that places burdens on others? Can you take that question and sort of give us some background here as to why this is still sitting in front of SCOTUS?
Yes. Well, I and my organization, Priests for Life, are also petitioners in this case. It actually combines 37 different petitioners from across the country of all different religious backgrounds and different types of organizations. Our problem is simply this. It is already illegal for the government to say to a believer that he's got to choose between following his faith and following the law. That's already illegal. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act says that the government cannot pressure me to violate my faith unless there is, number one, a compelling government interest, and number two, there's no less restrictive way for them to pursue that interest. So that's what's being argued in the court. Very, very reasonable to argue this. Does this mandate now, as we call it, the HHS mandate, violate the Religious Freedom Restoration Act? And we're saying, look, the government does not, the government recognizes that we have sincerely held religious beliefs, that they're making us complicit in providing abortion-inducing drugs to our employees and the health insurance plans. We're just saying leave us out of it. We're not trying to impose anything on our employees. We're not even trying to change any laws. We're just saying give us the same exemption that churches have. My organization sends priests into churches. We share the same faith, we share the same mission, but we don't share in the same exemption. To us, that doesn't make sense.
Okay, now, let me go ahead, and on this show, I will play both sides of this because there are two sides to every story. Here is Sister Simone Campbell. She is the executive director of Network, a national Catholic social justice lobby. She writes, and I quote, "All they have to do is sign a form that says they object. From there, these employers play no role in the provision of the contraceptive coverage." So what she's saying is, Father, there's no big deal. Say you object, walk away.
Well, first of all, it's a big mistake to think that just signing a form is not sometimes a big deal. Signing a death warrant, signing a check for $1 million, signing something that says I abdicate my faith, it depends what you're signing and what it says. Secondly, that is not all we're being asked to do. Because if all the government were doing were to say to us, listen, just raise your hand and say you object and we'll leave you alone, well, then this case would have been over as soon as it started, because we did register our objection. We registered our objection with a federal lawsuit that has been in district court, court of appeals, and now the Supreme Court. The government is asking us to do something different than just signing a form and saying we object. By signing the form, we are authorizing our insurance provider to then be the vehicle to provide to our employees through our health insurance plan the very coverage to which we object. What we're saying is there's a less restrictive way the government can accomplish.
Then I've only got about a minute left here. Let me bring this in here because about a minute left, and people say that this is a workaround. I mean, that's the phrase that we hear all the time. Don't worry about it. It's a simple workaround here. So what is it that you would like to see happen, that in your mind must happen?
Very simple. Just as they have exempted the churches and find other ways for those employees to get this coverage, they can exempt us. Just because we are a religious organization and we object, just leave us alone. Provide the coverage that you think these folks should have if they want it by some other means that doesn't involve our permission, our authorization, or our health insurance plan.
With regard to SCOTUS, it looks like right now that we may come down to a lot of 4-4 decisions here until that extra judge is there. In 30 seconds, how much does this concern you? Because then decisions are just going to go right back to the lower courts.
Well, yes, that is a distinct possibility. My sense from the oral arguments today is that we are likely going to get a 4-4 in this case. But in this case also there is a circuit split. The Eighth Circuit has ruled in favor of groups like ours. Other circuits have ruled against us. So sending it back down may not be a workable thing. We're hoping they'll rehear it in the next term when there are 9 justices.
And the fight will continue. I have no doubt about it, because I know how passionate you are about this, and so are so many others. Father Frank Pavone, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and your comments. Now, let's ask then the viewers here, because is this really a big deal? Because as I pointed out, both sides, some will say, look, this is not what we signed up for. This is not what we want to do. The people who are of faith believe that. Others say it's no big deal. It's already covered and you can just get a workaround in it. Boy, I'll tell you, there's got to be a lot of passions out here about this. Tell us what you think. Evidence of why America needs to get away from one facet of the presidential election cycle. That is next on The Hardline.